Hello, welcome. It is so great to see all of you. That sounds kind of weird, but it is nice to see all of you. This physical distancing thing is tough. We miss you all, and we hope you are all well and healthy. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. Welcome to our first ever Nasty Women New Mexico Virtual Candidate Forum. We are happy you are taking the time to gather together with us here tonight. My name is Paula Jackson, and I am a Nasty Women New Mexico member, and I will be your moderator tonight. Tonight we are featuring the Democratic candidates from New Mexico Senate District 20. Here's how it will work tonight. And just so you know, I'm only going to go through this once, not before each candidate. Candidates are appearing tonight in alphabetical order by last name. To maintain the legitimacy of the individual candidates and their views, candidates will not be allowed to view the questions and answers of the other candidates until after the forum is completed and the videos have been posted. All candidates will be asked the same questions in the same order. Each candidate will have approximately 2.5 minutes to answer each question. Follow-up questions may be asked by either the moderator or Mater Herschel, our meeting director. Meeting attendees may submit questions through the chat function. There is no guarantee these questions will be asked, however, during tonight's event. The meeting director and the moderator will decide if there is available time. Each of these separate forums is being recorded. These videos, once completed, will be posted to our Nasty Women New Mexico website and to Slack. Meeting attendees have been muted. Please double check that your microphone icon is marked out or turned off. And if you are on your phone, please make sure your speakerphone is turned off. I'd like to thank the other members of our virtual candidate forum team, Mater Herschel, Marianne Dickinson, Terry Storch, and Felice Garcia. Before we begin, we want to give a shout out to longtime Nasty Women New Mexico member and fabulous Ward 28C Chair, Liz Dyer. We are also sending a shout out to Nasty Women New Mexico member and longtime Democratic Party activist and Ward 28B Chair, Neely Lang. These wards are smack in the middle of New Mexico Senate District 20, and we know they will be working hard for the Democratic candidate who wins the primary in June. All right, let's get started. This pandemic, in combination with other global crises, lack of clean water, climate-related disasters, mass migrations, trade and supply disruptions, the economic impact of plummeting oil prices, has shown us how ill-prepared and inadequate our existing institutions and systems are in addressing our current and future challenges. Question 1. Most stark are the fragility of our social structure and the instability of our economic security, especially for the most vulnerable, the most financially insecure, the unprotected but essential workers, the unsheltered, and the disabled. How do you see, Martin, our state government addressing these current needs in a systemic way to mitigate the impact and better prepare for future crises?
Thank you, Paula, and everyone. I'm very pleased to be here with you tonight. I'll get right to the answer, as we've got limited time. First and foremost, particularly as our legislature meets this coming June, in the middle apparently, I think there's some basic principles that they have to be focused on as they work with the governor to address all of the issues you just brought up. First, there can be no cuts to key basic services. This is health, food, safety, education, and a piece of education that I am particularly focused on in my campaign is not taking away the early childhood funding that they provided. So how are they going to do this? They're going to have to cut some things, but we also have to look at revenues. First, it's an opportunity for us to relook at our tax structure. I know they probably won't get that done this June, but they need to do some previews. We'd probably but we should make our tax structure more progressive and have the wealthiest New Mexicans pay more. We also need to raise the capital gains rate and get rid of some of the exemptions that we've had. The regulation around combined reporting for corporations that are paying no New Mexico taxes needs to be fixed, that loophole. I think we'll pass, as the governor said today, hey, how about passing marijuana? That's $100 million. So those are some specific things that they can do. The other piece that I think we all have to work on is the activity at the federal level. Today, a $500 billion, bill was passed by the House and goes to the president's desk. But it's the reason that again it had to be passed is that the first one went to large companies. We can't allow that to happen anymore.
Excuse
me.
Is more focused. Yes. You have 30 seconds left, just so you know.
Okay. So actually one of the things that I would advocate that you all do is send money to Amy McGrath, who's opposing Mitch McConnell, and we need to get the Democratic control of the Senate. If we have control of the Senate, the House, and the presidency, we'll probably have to get rid of the filibuster, but this is a time of crisis in which the federal government needs to act.
Okay, Martin, I'd like to follow up real quick on that. How do you see us meeting the needs specifically of, if you could go back a little bit to our most vulnerable? Let's just pick two, for instance, our unsheltered New Mexican citizens and our disabled. I didn't quite hear something that would answer that.
Okay. In regards to our unsheltered, we have to do what they've been doing in some other cities. Some of the hotels have to become available because we can't build housing for them overnight. We're still arguing around that in Bernalillo County. So that's an immediate action to get them shelter there as well as food. And also we need to use the empty hotels for quarantining people as they're doing in Europe. And I know that's a little bit off the topic, but we need to get those people housing for the moment, ensure they have food. Secondly, in terms of the disabled, it's pretty much the same. I think one of the big opportunities we have in this legislative session is to hire more people and make the provisions for it who can work to help the disabled to be able to get access to the food, shelter, or anything that they're missing. And the other thing is I did the Roadrunner Food Bank a week ago, Friday, and it was amazing how many people were there. I'd encourage everyone to donate their time as well as their money to those folks. And there were many disabled folks who came and got their food.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin. Moving on. Question 2. Our state budget is being severely and negatively impacted right now. What measures would you take to address budget shortfalls, and what do you propose doing to strengthen and diversify our economy in order to meet our community's socioeconomic and infrastructure needs?
Right. That's a big one to chew off, but basically I think I covered what we need to do in terms of increasing revenue for the state. The other thing we have to do, and I think everyone will agree with this, is get rid of our dependency on oil. And maybe that'll come up in another question, but we have to diversify the economy. We have ample wind, ample solar. We could actually get I believe the ETA moved up, and I would certainly vote against anything that came in the way of getting there and anything that tried to stop it. But if we were able to diversify our economy, and those are just a couple of examples, and there are others, there's certainly film and retirement, although we've got to do some regulatory work around that. I think that we can raise revenue, as you asked. I think we're going to have to go into the rainy day fund as well. And then we have to prepare for the future, because something like this is going to come around again. And are we prepared for it? And are we going to put some money aside to be able to do it? And again, going back to taking advantage of all federal revenues.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on. Let me check real quick. I don't see any chat questions. Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you. Okay, question 3. What are your ideas for New Mexico making the transition to a more resilient and inclusive clean economy. So resilient, inclusive, and clean New Mexico economy. What are your ideas to make that transition? And will we be able to stick with your plan? And what will be the timeline given the New Mexico economy after COVID-19?
First, let's start with COVID-19. We do not know the timeline. Unfortunately, I believe what was said by the head of the CDC, we're going to see a major spike this winter, and we have to get prepared for that. And then the question is, when will we get a vaccine? Normally, it takes 3 to 4 years. You know, if they get it down to a year and a half. So after we get the COVID economy and we go back to, I don't want to call it normal because it isn't going to be the same. Multiple things are going to change. We are then going to have to take that opportunity to get less dependent on oil. We can't just stop the fracking because oil will come back, especially as the world comes back and starts consuming again. And while we have it, we need the revenue from it, but we need to ultimately stop the fracking. So we have to think of it as a three-legged stool with jobs, revenue for the state, and the impact on the environment. And I think working together, we can bring that down and eventually get rid of fracking and then move into a diversified economy that is based upon the inherent what we have here in the state. Again, we talked about wind and solar. You know, this could be, you go to Phoenix, this could be a fantastic retirement community. And then we're going to have to be able to fix the healthcare infrastructure to be able to take that on. But all that means more jobs, and all that means hopefully better paying jobs. And with better paying jobs and a diversified economy to which to tax and take care of those who don't, I think we'll be able to move forward. The other piece that I think is important in this is that the unions need to become stronger. This is an opportunity for us to bring collective bargaining back to the table, strengthen the unions. If you look back into the early 1900s when Theodore Roosevelt allowed the miners to go on strike and protected them, it changed the world. And we got rid of that 1% at that time. It came back, but if the unions can build back up again, I think we're going to get a stronger economy, and we're going to get an economy that it works for everyone, but they have to play a very significant role as they did over 100 years ago.
Okay, and we have a couple follow-ups for that. We have a question from Wendy Parker Wood. Martin, how would you delineate the roles and responsibilities of the federal government and the state of New Mexico going forward in order to be better prepared when surge or stage number 2 of COVID hits, or possibly any future cataclysmic health crises like you mentioned?
We're going to have to take a lesson from what we're going through right now. The way the executive is acting is to me, it's criminal. And we're going to have to legislate. And again, this goes back to having to take the Senate and having to get rid of the filibuster so we can put these things into law. We're going to have to create legislation that clearly defines what's a federal responsibility and what's a state responsibility, instead of this crazy back and forth in a different story every night. And I think that that can be done. The exact laws, I can't tell you now, but I'm sure that a democratic legislative process will be able to come up with significant limitations to the executive power. And the other thing is we're going to have to, that executive power will be strengthened by the changes that will come in the Supreme Court, and we're going to have to look at that as well.
Okay. What about, we have a question from Terry Storch. What about reinstating the income tax rollback that was part of the Richardson administration?
I'm sorry, I wasn't living in New Mexico during the Richardson administration, so I can't give you a detail on that, but I am definitely I'm assuming that there was a rollback on the wealthiest New Mexicans, and we have to reverse that. I mean, everyone needs to pay their fair share. So I would be in favor, again, restructuring the tax code for more progressivity, more payment by the wealthiest. And ultimately, in the long run, with a taxable economy, we're going to be able to do much more than we have done previously. So if that's what the question is, yeah, no, that whatever that rollback was, we need to roll back.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I'm going to move on. We do have some other questions that have been coming in. Let's go ahead. We still have about 30 seconds left on this. Regarding health restructuring following COVID-19, and this is from Mary Canane, regarding health structuring following COVID-19, do you support the implementation of Medicare for All, also known as a single payer system?
I believe that fundamentally healthcare is a right. No question about it. The question is, how do we get there? How do we get there in this economy over time? If Medicare for all is the answer and we can structurally make it happen and pay for it, then that would be the direction we're going to go. But I think that that's going to take multiple years to get worked out. As Elizabeth Warren began to say, I really think that at this time, while that's going to be a national issue that gets resolved, because I think everyone sees that we have to have healthcare as a right through this crisis, but there's so much we can do here in New Mexico. I mean, one of the things that complicates it is that while we
30 seconds, Martin, 30 seconds.
Insurance access, but we have to be able to get or have primary care providers in the behavioral health infrastructure to deliver that care, and they don't exist today. So I have a number of plans to directly address those issues so that there really are people to give the care at the end of the day.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Excellent. All right. Our last question, Martin, moving on. Our state law criminalizing abortion predates Roe v. Wade and would be in effect if Roe v. Wade is overturned federally. What specific measures will you take to provide accessible, affordable, and safe abortion and reproductive health care for women in New Mexico?
Great question. I have always been a champion for women's reproductive rights. I don't believe that any politician should ever get in the way of the decisions that she and her provider want to make. And further, they should never pass any laws that challenge the safety of a woman to get the counseling she desires, and if she chooses to have an abortion, actually have that happen. None of what these other states are doing should ever happen in New Mexico. And then that comes down to what your question was. We just have to get rid of that law, period, plain and simple. And I do think I have an opportunity to play a unique role because I am a physician, and I will be the only physician, only person with healthcare background in the state Senate if I'm elected. And I think with all the 25 years of experience I've had in healthcare, and I know I've worked, run insurance companies, medical groups, hospitals, I know where the money moves and I know where the waste is, and I know how we can redirect it so that we're doing well by healthcare. But I think in that role, I can weigh in, particularly with the Senate, where the difficulties are with that law, and find ways to bargain, to persuade, to do whatever I can to get enough Democratic votes to get that law off the books, period.
Okay, thank you. So Martin, thank you so much for this. We'd like to give you about a minute. You have about 45 seconds from your other, so I'll give you about a minute and a half, 45 seconds for a final statement if you'd like. And before that, I want to thank you for being here with us. And now you have some time for closing.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I am here because after 25 years of working, not just in Albuquerque, but I've worked all over the state. I started the first rural VA clinics anywhere in the country back in the late 80s. I moved to the University of New Mexico, was medical director of the faculty practice and treated the indigent. I then moved on to Loveless, where I was chief medical officer and CEO, and on and on. And I was the founding CEO of Obamacare here, New Mexico Health Connections and True Health New Mexico. I know this state. I know what people in rural areas need, as well as what we do here in Albuquerque. And I believe that I have an opportunity to get better health care, less expensive health care, accessible health care, move towards that health care as a right as a physician in the Senate. And the other reason that I'm doing this is I don't know how to flip this around and show you the picture of my mom on the wall walking in front of the Senate in Springfield. I wish I could, but she was a state senator. If you've been watching Hulu and Phyllis Schlafly and all of that group, my mom fought Phyllis Schlafly in 1972, 73, 74. That's where I came from. My mother was an acolyte of Eleanor Roosevelt, and she used to tell us as kids what Eleanor said. She didn't actually
10
say,
seconds, 10 seconds.
you do what lies before you to be done. Take care of people who need.
Thank you so much, Martin, very much. Thank you very much for being here with us. Everyone else, please hang on as we're going to disconnect from Martin. Thank you so much, Martin.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to our next speaker.